Welcome, welcome. This is Mark Reed. Welcome to the show. And today we've got two theists. One that I've talked to before, PTown, who was a great to chat to, and his friend Powerword, who are coming on to talk to me about their beliefs and maybe clarify some things from the last discussion. I do apologize. This was very impromptu. I didn't give a lot of warning, but here we are. And welcome to the show, guys. How are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Thanks for having me back.
No
And
problem. No
yeah,
problem.
I know the spur of the moment kind of thing here,
Yeah,
but I think that you and I naturally just kind of find a topic to talk about. I
sure.
wanted to bring Power Word because I'm not always quite the best at answering your questions and maybe
Okay.
not the most eloquent. But I met him a little while ago. We've only talked about 3 times, but we seem to have a sort of
Hmm.
connection and share similar doctrines. So I feel comfortable being on
Okay.
a stage with him, and thought maybe he would have something good to contribute.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, go ahead, Pal. Yeah. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to just having a nice discussion with you. And,
Hmm.
you know, I feel like a lot of the information that will be presented tonight has the potential to change your paradigm and
Okay.
just can't wait to get started.
Yeah, sure. So, is there anything you want to focus on particularly? I believe that you said you're a young Earth creationist as well.
Yeah, actually, I am a young Earth creationist, and there is a
Mm.
very specific starting point that we can start at. I watched your
Okay.
discussion with PTown from, I think it was last week or so.
Hmm.
I'm going to post in chat. This is private chat, and then I can post also in the YouTube chat. It's just a queued up part of that discussion where you talk about the supernatural, and that would be a great point to start.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you want, I can play it.
Go for it.
That shouldn't be a problem if I can get my act together. Just one second. Share screen. That's the thing isn't coming through, is it? The sound isn't coming through because I'm on Firefox. Um, that's okay. Yeah, I can't play it because I can't have sound come through because I'm on Firefox, which is horrible. So yeah, I think it's for the best if we just go through what I actually said. What was it that I actually said there, or do you want to share it on your screen?
Yeah, I could share the video. That's fine.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can.
please.
Okay, sure. Let me just
Yeah, you need to
present.
be on Chrome to share sound, and I keep starting this in Firefox. So I didn't know I would be sharing, which is a bit silly, but never mind.
All right, this is the first time I'm doing this, so
Well,
hopefully.
while he's figuring that out, I'll just give a little background here. One
Sure,
thing
sure.
that, and I could fail here, Power, but one thing I think we're a little bit different about or different with is I think what's the right word, Power, um, in terms of being, um, how you believe more in miracles,
Yeah, I'm
right?
a
The impact of
Pentecostal.
prayer.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, is
Mhm.
charismatic the right word? I mean, that gets tossed around. I don't want to use the wrong one, but
Charismatic is a little bit more extreme. I think that's where you get to kind of the wild, like uh, trying to bite snakes or have them bite you and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit more extreme. And there is
I
a
was
sect of
going to get to that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
there is a sect of Christians that are obviously using kind of outrageous activity to get a following, and it's a shame that that happens, but it does. And that's not really me. I have experienced personal miracles, I've witnessed group miracles, and this is my experience. And not everyone gets to have a personal experience like that, but based on today's technology, there's ways to actually incorporate experience into peer-reviewed studies and things like that. So that's kind of what I'm getting to. So I'll go ahead and share, and then I will play, and we'll see what happens. If you guys
fantastic.
are ready.
Thank you so much. I will be more organized next time. Which is a claim I keep making and keep sort of, sort of getting to, but I've got a long way to go before this is the professional channel it should be.
All right,
But go for it.
I'm going to mute, and if you can't hear it, let me know, because I don't want to have the echo.
I'm not hearing anything. That's okay. What I might do is I might sort of leave the studio quickly and then come back to it in Chrome rather than Firefox. So give me 1 second and I'll be back in 1 sec.
And that's actually good because I have other multimedia as well.
Okay.
So cool. Looks like it's just me and you, PTown.
We got the show.
Mark already left.
This happened last time too. So at least we know this works.
So I guess for the people listening, I'd just like to say a couple things before Mark gets back. But in the Bible, it specifically says, and this is in James 1:5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. That means whether you're an atheist or a Christian or whatever, God has said that he will give you wisdom. All you have to do is ask. And I think everyone would agree that if it is true wisdom, that means that it's truth and it's not something that can be disproven. So hopefully everyone that's watching this stream has a desire to learn and a desire to understand the world around them and become more educated in the realm of what is truth. And kind of that's really what differentiates all of us, is just where we are in our search for truth.
Yeah, so hold it. So guys, I didn't leave in order so you could sort of preach away while I'm gone. That isn't very cool of you. So I don't mind, organizing things so you can share videos and stuff, but this isn't a preaching episode. Okay, just understand that. What we're doing is having a discussion today. Yeah, I don't think that's very cool at all. That's sort of not why I've showed up or my audience has showed up. It's not really what we're here for.
Now, I could take the blame for that, Mark, because I didn't really give Power a background on your channel and your audience, and I apologize.
Yeah, no worries. Just letting you know that sort of preaching isn't convincing to me or anybody, and I left to be able to allow you to play a video, not to preach to my audience. That isn't why they're here. I'm sorry, that's not why they're here. And we're willing to listen to you, but preaching is sort of a one-sided thing. It's you sort of telling people something without a response, and that we're going to have a problem with. Just letting you know. Now, this video. Give me 1 sec. I'm sorry. I am a bit disorganized, I must admit. It is morning for me. So you put the link in chat, didn't you? 1 second, private chat. Okay, I don't have it there because I've re-logged in. Can you just post that again, PowerWord? Hello?
Okay.
Oh, there, gotcha. Yep. Got it. Beautiful. All right.
Yeah, and I apologize. I didn't realize that, that was a thing. This is like the first time I'm doing this
Yeah,
kind
no
of thing.
worries. Just letting you know up front. Whoop.
And to be honest, I didn't really think it was preaching. I just kind of thought everybody was that was kind of like a general thing. Everybody wanted wisdom. I didn't know that was like something
Well, yeah,
preaching.
I guess that most atheists may or may not consider it wisdom. Um, whenever you sort of quote from a book, you've got to have more than just it comes from a book as an authority to back it up, because just about anybody can write anything, and that's why and I'm not saying it isn't wisdom. I'm saying it may or may not be, and really, what I would prefer is that we discuss it and see whether that is something that is in fact applicable to our lives or not applicable to our lives, because unfortunately not everything in the Bible is, especially the Old Testament stuff. Okay, I'll just play this video so we can get an idea of what you're talking about.
Well, maybe the audio is not going to be working, boys.
Audio is still not working? All right,
Yeah.
give me a sec. Let's try it. I have gotten this to work before. Let's try it again.
In the dictionaries throughout.
Is that working?
Yep, that works.
Okay. So when I'm using a term like that, I'm more talking about all of us, humans, basically. And maybe that is a sort of baggage from my own beliefs, because I'm a secular humanist. I think that humanity is the most important thing. So, yeah, I'm sorry if it came across that way. I certainly didn't mean it.
No, and I don't think that your intentions are bad at all. And I'm just trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you that using we from a human perspective.
Is that the section that you wanted me to show?
No, you went a little bit too far back. It's
okay.
regarding the supernatural.
Must have gone back a bit far. And that's sort of, I mean, you have to go into the whole history of the scientific method, which is methodological naturalism. Have you heard methodological naturalism before?
You're welcome to define it if you'd like.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
familiar with it.
Yeah, so you have sort of a philosophical or ontological naturalism, which basically I don't subscribe to necessarily. It basically says God can't exist. We're excluding God from any kind of thought. It can't exist. We're only going to believe in the natural. Now, that isn't science. Science is methodological naturalism. What that translates to is that you cannot use God or supernatural things as evidence in science. Like, so you can't start with the idea of God, and you can't use supernatural things to demonstrate that the supernatural exists. But if it leads to there, that's fine, right? That's the difference between the two. That science isn't necessarily prohibited from arriving at a conclusion of a God or anything supernatural for that matter. But it is prohibited in using the supernatural to arrive at that conclusion. And the reason behind that is because we can't seem to find the supernatural. Like we can't seem to put it in the scientific method.
And that's it. That's the quote.
Is it okay?
Okay.
So we can't seem to put the supernatural in the scientific method.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you want to expound on that, you can. I have kind of like a couple things I'd share after that.
Yeah. So the scientific methodology came about during the Enlightenment, which before then the supernatural was considered to be a reasonable part of a methodology. Sort of, if this exists supernaturally, then it can cause these things. You could see this in the trials and justices beforehand that ended with sort of the Salem witch trials, where spectral evidence like dreams and supernatural things were allowed, but then we sort of took that out because it basically led us down some really wrong paths. So while there is nothing preventing the supernatural from being discovered by science, it's got to arrive there at natural means. Because once you start to put the supernatural into the methodology, you can be, sort of go down some really, really terrible pathways. And I can sort of give examples of that. So that's sort of what I mean by that. Is it possible to arrive at the supernatural by using natural means? I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. I don't know. But we can't use supernatural means for science.
Okay, so what I brought today is a series of peer-reviewed papers and other material that kind of they're special because you mentioned the Salem witch trials, and
Sure.
hundreds of years ago we didn't have the technology that we have today. There's been a revolution. Sure. We can video things, and we can actually perform a scientific analysis on a lot of stuff, and sure, we can have a peer review process that discusses it with credentialed individuals. So yeah, what I'll do, I'm going to post a link, if it's okay if I read the abstract of this peer-reviewed paper.
Sure.
So this,
as long as it's not too long, I guess. If you want to put it in, I can review the paper.
It's pretty quick. I can read it pretty quickly, just the abstract. Well, but I'll paste it in both chats, and then I'll just read it real quick. So the abstract goes like this. An 18-year-old female lost the majority of her central vision over the course of 3 months in 1959. Medical records from 1960 indicate visual acuities of less than 2,400 for both eyes, corresponding to legal blindness. On fundus examination of the eye, there were dense yellowish-white areas of atrophy in each fovea, and the individual was diagnosed with juvenile macular degeneration. In 1971, another examination recorded her uncorrected VA as a finger counting on the right hand and motion on the left. She was diagnosed with macular degeneration and declared legally blind. And then in 1972, having been blind for over 12 years, the individual reportedly regained her vision instantaneously after receiving proximal intercessory prayer. And this intercessory prayer, if you read in the article, was specifically in the Christian tradition, which means in the name of Jesus. And subsequent medical records document substantial improvement to kind of corroborate what happened. So in summary, you have a peer-reviewed journal, and this is, PubMed.gov, that states there was blindness that was a result of macular degeneration. And today there is no cure for macular degeneration. It doesn't exist. So this cure, what happened here, is a one-off. Statistically speaking, there are no other cases of this happening. And it happened with a husband praying for a wife one night after a Bible study, and he prayed for her in the name of Jesus. He simply said, I know you can do this, heal my wife. And it happened instantaneously. So this is kind of one of those things that a lot of people aren't aware of. I don't know if you've ever seen this or heard of this, but it's special in that it is documented. It is something that you can actually read, and you can say, well, it's in a published peer-reviewed journal. It seems legitimate. All the sources in it are doctors. It's been cited many times. So therefore, it seems like, as a person who just wants to seek out truth, this particular paper holds a lot of validity for anyone, really. And this is since earlier on the conversation, I mentioned that I experienced personal miracles. This is my way of presenting a personal miracle, but in a scientific way, which is something, like I said, that is just possible recently with the advent of technology.
And if I can just butt in, we got some people, I think a good number of them are requesting the link in the chat. I can't put the link in there, but if you guys are at computers, maybe you could for them.
Yeah, I posted it in the YouTube chat. I guess I'm not allowed to post links.
I think, maybe it's in the main. Oh,
yeah,
maybe.
I don't.
Oh, it won't let you do it.
Yeah. So this, and reading further than the abstract, they do say that there are a number of other options of why it could be and why they don't think it is. She also had a twin as well, and I'm just reading through that. The twin did not have the condition. Yeah, and they also say it is possible it could have been retinitis pigmentosa. Approximately 21% of 91% had an effect on their vision. So the prayer had an effect on their vision, which is a lot less serious disease. So if you actually go through the entire article instead of just the abstract, it actually lists a number of things that it could be. And admittedly, it says it's unlikely to be this one or that one, and it could be this one. But there are other explanations that they give for this. The problem here is you're just reading the abstract and saying, hey, that's the entire article. And I realize this is behind a paywall, but I actually have university access, so I can read the entire article. Have you read the entire paper?
I've actually read it many times.
Many times. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, and they say it may be. So the problem here is we don't know how this woman was got better, right? That's the problem. And you're inserting God, but you're not giving any kind of scientific evidence as to why it is God.
So
that's the problem.
So in the paper itself, it says the prayer happened in a Christian tradition. So that is the evidence that this action happened, and then at the same instant that the action happened, the macular degeneration was instantly cured. They do not say in the paper that macular degeneration has ever been cured instantly.
But they do say it is possible that it was not macular degeneration. Do they say that in the paper?
Well, she was diagnosed with adolescent and adult macular degeneration. So to say in retrospect that the diagnosis for decades was incorrect is kind of it would be disingenuous to do that, because the paper itself is doctors over decades and their notes proving that this macular degeneration was instantly cured. So hindsight, you could say, well, maybe it wasn't, maybe she wasn't really blind, but the reality is she was diagnosed and she was cured instantly.
I didn't say that. I said there's other cases of blindness and misdiagnoses happen. They do happen. See, the problem here is that you've sort of gone, well, this event occurred, therefore God, because basically they prayed, but you haven't done anything to connect the two. You've basically said it's a post hoc ergo propter hoc. Because this happened, it has to be this thing, while not giving any significant connection between the two. And the paper itself says there are other things that it could have been and misdiagnosed as that are not as serious. And admittedly, they say they don't think that's the case, but it is possible, right? It says that it is possible, correct?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and just read the summary. says the patient was blind for 13 years because of a condition that appeared to be a severe form of
you've
Stargardt's
read out.
disease.
Hang on a sec. I just interrupt. You've read out the abstract once before. I got
No,
you.
this is the summary, the conclusion. Sorry.
Okay.
Following a prayer event, her vision was spontaneously restored and remains intact to date 47 years later. Symptoms were resolved in the context of proximal intercessory prayer with a notable aspect: theological acceptance of healing prayer with a specific belief recognized through the authority of Jesus. The proximal intercessory prayer may have been associated with the response in the ANS of the patient. However, research on the potential for proximal intercessory prayer to affect the ANS and/or reverse vision loss associated with JMD is limited. Findings from this report and others like it warrant investment in future research to ascertain whether and how proximal intercessory prayer experience may play a role in apparent spontaneous resolution of lifelong conditions having otherwise no prognosis of recovery.
So did it say that intercessory prayer cured her at any point in there?
It said specifically there was a notable aspect.
No, power word. Answer my question. Did it say that intercessory prayer cured her at any point in that conclusion?
Yes.
No, it didn't.
Symptoms were resolved in the context of proximal intercessory prayer with a notable aspect: theological acceptance of healing prayer with specific belief recognized through the authority of Jesus.
Yeah, power word. You've read it out once already. I'm not going to allow you to keep reading the same stuff over and over and over and over. So does context mean cause? If I say, I did this in the context of this other thing, does that mean that other thing caused it?
In this case, that's what the paper is saying.
No, it doesn't. If I say I'm having this conversation in the context of drinking my morning coffee, that doesn't mean that the morning coffee caused this conversation to happen. You are 100% incorrect. That does not say that was the cause. It says that further research is required to determine the cause. Do you know what ANS is?
The autonomic nervous system.
Correct. So it's saying that more investigation is required to find out what happened with the autonomic nervous system that caused this, right? So they're not saying it caused it. They're saying further research is required. You just read it and say context means cause. This means that it was caused by this, where in fact what they are saying is we don't understand what happened. Further research is required. You are taking from this what you want to take from this. And I agree, much more research is required. And if that prayer is actually the cause, then absolutely. But what we don't have here, and why they say context, is because we don't even have a correlation between intercessory prayer and healing these things, much less a causation established. Because lots of people use intercessory prayer and nothing happens, correct?
This paper is what I'm talking about. I mean,
no. Hold on. I asked you a question. There's lots of other examples where people have prayed for things and nothing happens, correct?
People can pray. Yes, people can pray in the name of lesser gods.
Right.
People can pray not necessarily in the name of Jesus.
But people have prayed in the name of Jesus and nothing's happened, right?
So I guess you're saying that 100% of all prayer in the name of Jesus has to be fulfilled immediately.
I didn't say that.
So
I didn't say that.
So what is your point though? What are you trying to say?
Yeah, my point is that lots of people have prayed to Jesus and a lot more fervently and done everything possible to pray to Jesus to heal them. And almost all of the time, they haven't been healed. Right?
I would disagree with that, yeah.
You would disagree. So you have tons of these papers where people have prayed to Jesus and been healed.
Yeah, I can post another one if you want.
How many do you have?
I have 4 right here. Well, 4 examples that I was going to show you.
And how many people do you think have prayed to Jesus to heal their ills over the course of human history?
Well, you can't draw a direct parallel between the number of peer-reviewed
Sure we
journal
can.
papers.
Sure we can. What I'm saying is that if so many people have prayed for something to happen, right? Like sort of all people going through this who are religious will pray to Jesus to heal them, because that is something that Christians do. It's one of the things that they do to try to, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just they try to accept what has happened to them and pray to Jesus to heal them. It's a very common thing. And through all of that, we've got so few examples of somebody actually overcoming their illness, that to say, hey, it is this that caused it, is really disingenuous, because you're sort of cherry picking out of all these people, because medical miracles do happen. Like they're very unusual, but people do get over cancer. People do have strange things that they shouldn't be able to heal from, and do, and that's been documented. So the idea that a Christian that prays and then it happens, you have to connect that prayer with it actually happening. And that's something that you have no interest in doing. The paper says, hey, more research is required to connect these dots. And you're ignoring that part, Pat. Why are you ignoring that part?
Can I step in for a second and just comment?
Yeah.
Just kind of be the middleman. I just want to kind of bring it back to the original topic, which is, and I think it was talking about what I was talking about in that video earlier on. But I think that taking God and the spiritual world completely out of science, in this case, the scientific method, isn't a beneficial thing. And I think that I agree with you that further research, needs to be done, and I'm very skeptical too, Mark. I mean,
if it does lead to this prayer being able to cure people, and we can find out how that happens, sure, I'm all on board. But the problem is, because so many people pray for their loved ones to recover, the fact that somebody did recover from something, and the paper says there are other things that it could be apart from this one that they think it is, it doesn't, you can't just say that's because of the prayer without establishing that.
Right.
Now, the problem with putting God in science is that there's not just one God out there, and there's not just one supernatural thing out there. That if we accept God into science, we've also got to accept, Ganesh and Allah and demons and possibly Satan doing this kind of thing, which was one of my examples. People did believe before the germ theory of disease that illness was caused by demons. And how did that work out for us?
Well, actually, the guy who did discover germs actually called them demons because he was a Christian. Sure. He didn't know what else to call them. It doesn't make him any less scientific. He still instead someone else who wasn't a Christian, a guy named Dr. Germ, where we get the term germs from, took his idea and made it quote unquote scientific. It didn't make it any less scientific because the other guy called them spirits and demons or ghosts.
But he
still conducted science.
Yeah, but he didn't do that with spiritual means. He did that with naturalistic means, correct?
He did it as a doctor, as a scientist, and following presumably the scientific method, but was chastised by the Church of Science of the time, just like the Church of Science that we experience now. And just because he used the terms ghosts, his peer-reviewed stuff was rejected, and it really slowed down the progression of knowledge that has saved probably 1 billion people by now.
No, hold on, because you said a few things that are absolutely wrong. You said religion of science. science is not a religion. It has none of the characteristics that you would apply religion to. And in saying that, you're sort of saying that currently using the science of computers and sort of troubleshooting is a religious practice. It's one of the most disingenuous things you can say, because in no way is science religious. How is science religious?
What I was trying to say is, because in a way, it can be, again, religious might not be the best word, but I don't like the word religious. I don't like the word religion. It's, in a way, in this case, the scientific community of that time was a religion, and again, I apologize for calling it that, but it was a religion in that time, because they simply rejected this man's knowledge of science, something that he can contribute to society and save so many lives with, simply because the man was using words like ghosts, souls, spirits. But it was just because he was using words from his Bible that he studies doesn't change, and calling him that, just because you call them that instead of germs, doesn't make it anything less scientific. So the other scientists or doctors of the time just pushed him out, because in that sense it's kind of like a church of science.
So the person that originally came up with the idea was Girolamo Fracastoro. He was an Italian physician, poet, scholar, and mathematics, geography, and astronomy, sort of a Renaissance man. He subscribed to the philosophy of atomism and rejected appeals to hidden causes in scientific investigation. He basically said that epidemic disease, and this is in 1476 he was born, he basically said epidemic diseases are caused by transferable tiny particles or spores. So he used the word spores, not ghosts.
Well, no, see, that germ you're talking about? I don't have it in front of me.
No, that was before germ. It actually.
I wish I had my books out because I could find this guy. No, he had he was a general manager of a hospital, I believe, in New York. And I think you and I have talked about this before. The guy I'm talking about before this guy, probably. They had a morgue. Yeah.
1546. 1540
okay, never mind,
before
after.
1546.
Sure. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
but
I don't
anyway,
think America existed at that point. And correct me if I'm wrong, but New York wasn't a thing then.
Well, anyway, I don't want to stay too much on this since we've talked about it before, but I think, power, maybe to bridge into something else that's similar, and it's up to you. That video of that pastor, do you think something like that would be impactful? Because I found it interesting. I mean, you could say the guy's acting, but it was kind of like.
Yeah, so this is kind of going to what Mark was talking about regarding, if you prayed really hard, and there's a lot of people that do their best prayer and they don't get prayer answered. So there's a actual recording of a pastor. His name's Dwayne Miller. He had a severe case of the flu, and it damaged his vocal cords. And as a pastor, he basically was no longer able to.
Okay, just a second, Power Word, because we were on a discussion of something and you've completely changed the topic. So I'm going to hold you there, and I'm going to go back to PTown. And so with germ theory of disease, there's a long line of people working up to it, right? And so I don't doubt that people did think it was ghosts or demons or something like that. But the sort of the idea that influenced the first person to propose spores, which, obviously we know it's not spores like fungi now, right? That is not the correct timeline of what happened to lead to the germ theory of disease. This guy rejected hidden scientific cause. He was a Renaissance man. He was part of the Enlightenment. He rejected the idea of the supernatural causing it. So yes, there may have been monks or people beforehand, or people that thought it was demonic influences or supernatural things, but that isn't where the idea originated. And even if it did, it doesn't mean that that is the correct idea to lead down. If you follow that logic, you're going to come to supernatural things can sort of, prevent disease. And we have found that idea to be just dangerous, if not, incredibly detrimental to patients. So I'm really sorry, PTown, but you are wrong on this. And sort of the idea that led up to Louis Pasteur and his germ theory of disease, no supernatural things were involved in that at all, right? At all. Louis Pasteur was a scientist that developed the theory with no religious or supernatural appeals at all. Okay, so I'm really sorry, and if you could find the name of whoever it was that preceded this Italian physician, I'd be more than happy to look at it. But to the best of my knowledge, this guy is the sort of predecessor to everybody who thought that germ theory, he was the start of germ theory.
No, I didn't mean to say that, Mark. That's not what I was saying. I was just trying to merely give you an example of somebody who was simply pushed out of the scientific community just because of his beliefs. It didn't change the fact that he took a natural way, and all he did was just have the nurses wash their hands with this particular chlorine solution, right? Not go from the morgues to delivering babies, right? Actually wash and clean themselves, and he wrote a paper about it, and there was a delay in applying that to other hospitals around the world, simply because his peers said that it's not scientific because of his view that ghosts were doing it. It's just a word, you can, so then someone else probably picks it up and tests his stuff, and then they get famous for it. All I was doing is just giving you an example.
Yeah, but it's not ghosts. If I think that ghosts in feces cause disease, so I clean out all the feces and put them, somewhere that's far away from civilization and take care of all of that waste matter, does that mean I'm right about the ghosts? It's beneficial, but it doesn't mean I'm right about the ghosts. I think you've got the wrong end of the stick here, saying, well, because he did something that was beneficial, he should be credited with discovering this thing. He didn't discover it. Just because he had a wrong idea and it was beneficial to people doesn't mean that he discovered what it was that was causing it. Now we kind of know what it is that's causing it, and the right people, the people who did think it was invisible bacteria, invisible to our eyes, bacteria spreading this disease, like Louis Pasteur, they certainly deserve the credit. I remember also there was another person who invented the clean room, Claire somebody, I can't remember the last name, but anyway, he was a guy that basically, in order to he invented the clean room by sterilizing an entire room, and now we can do surgeries and things in clean rooms because of their work. Somebody that thinks it's ghosts would not lead down that line of thought. Hey, can we sterilize an entire room? Right? It wouldn't lead there.
Well, I think this is the difference, is you jumping to the conclusion of the word ghosts and describing it as being a religious thing, when I'm simply just, it is also a very good descriptive. It is very, sure, or supernatural, or yeah. It could just be a good word to describe something that is invisible to our eyes without, a microscope, just something invisible to our eyes that's impacting the natural world. It's a good word to criticize somebody who's out there literally trying to save lives, simply because they're religious and used a descriptive word that's associated with being religious and pushing them out of science, is, I would have to take a stand, Mark, is not good for science. And
No,
we can agree to disagree. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's not good for science, because the word ghost, when you put it in a paper or some kind of official thing, it comes with a lot of baggage, like a ton of baggage. It comes with this supernatural identity. It comes with the cure, or the way to solve it is supernatural means. You are forgetting all of the baggage that comes with that word, because those things causing it are not supernatural entities that are formed of spirits or some kind of supernatural material formed from when a person died, or as a spirit that is somehow being mischievous. The word ghost comes with way more baggage than you are attributing to it. You were sort of saying, hey, use the word ghost and that meant germ. Wrong. He meant ghost.
I can't remember if it was ghosts or if he called them ghost spirits or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, that's a problem.
But it's not a problem if to him it was just a descriptive word of something bad that you can't see. Just because, and that's my point, is
Right.
discriminating against a man because he reads his Bible, and pushing him out of a scientific community, and not looking at the actual point of the study and how it can be applied to the world and how it can benefit is not.
Yeah,
but we can move on. I mean,
yeah,
I get your point.
Yeah, no, what you've got to understand is that when you do science and you are writing scientific papers, your word choices matter, and they matter a lot. If I write a paper about the transmission rates of, say, varying Ethernet and sort of distances and attenuation and things like that, if I say spirit rather than, the transmission of data, it has two separate connotations. And being like in the science, you've got to understand that when you refer to a technical word, it has certain, I say baggage, but it has things that come with it. It's why scientific papers are written in such a precise way and a careful way. It's because when you reference a certain word, you're bringing along with it the understanding of that word in the scientific context, even if that word doesn't mean that colloquially, right? You have to be aware of the usages of those words in the scientific community in which you work. So bringing in the word ghost, you are bringing in a whole bunch of things, or spirit, you are bringing in a whole bunch of things that in that paper or in whatever he wrote or whatever he was referencing was 100% utterly inaccurate. And that's what you've got to understand. It is inaccurate.
Well, I think that it's important to maybe it's not, though. Maybe it's not, because in this case, it was religion that also contributed to him looking at the study. And this is why, because Jewish women were not getting sick and not losing their kids or not dying after delivery. And because they have to follow specific procedures, which you can find in the Old Testament. And that was what was the beginning of it. Also, then he found that the ladies who were given birth couldn't make it to the hospital in time. They had a better survival rate than the ones in the hospital. So it was a progression, but it started with a religious idea.
And did he come to the conclusion of bacteria causing these problems, or was it spirits?
This was before we discovered bacteria.
So why would we credit him for discovering bacteria or finding the pathogens that cause disease when he did not do that and instead thought it was spirits?
Well, see, now throughout time, moving forward to now, where you're in school, right, and you have to write scientific papers, you can't use words like that. But And I get it. And that's because the scientific community is going to take it out, just going to admonish, or, I just don't think it's necessarily the right way that it should have progressed throughout history. I think that this man could have gone on, instead of losing his job as a general manager, instead of not getting published, instead of other people stealing his idea and branching off on it, sure, and calling it something that might have been called better. I still think that it would have been better for science to keep him in discovering more things. I think that maybe that's a possibility.
So nobody stole his idea. if he lived in New York, then there were people with the idea hundreds of years before him. So let's get this straight. No one's stolen his idea. It's worked off an Italian guy who thought it was spores in some way, like fungus spores, which that part was wrong, but he was right that it was invisible pathogens that were being transferred on contact. That was an old idea. So let's get that straight. I can put spiritual stuff in papers that I write. I can do that. However, what I have to do is back that up with credible science, which I am unable to do. So I wouldn't put it in there because I cannot make the link between supernatural things and the outcomes that I'm seeing, right? I do not see that link, so I would not put it in. But that doesn't stop me from putting it in. And if I can back it up, that would be incredibly notable for all of academia. But I can't, because I have to be aware that I can't just say, hey, the transmission rate of this data stream is affected by spirits, because I cannot make that link under the scientific method. And that's why. I don't know how you'd make that link under the scientific method, but assuming I could put it into a paper and demonstrate it. However, I can't, because I can't make that link at all. I can't prove that intercessory prayer will lower your attenuation rate, for instance.
I mean, we're just going to keep going back and forth. My point is, he wasn't trying to prove that it was ghosts or whatever word he used. He was just using it as a word, as a descriptive word.
Well, I don't know the case, and you haven't even given me the name of the
person.
So
I know, I'm sorry.
I can't see anything that's happened. It sounds like he believed it was ghosts, and that's a problem, and that's exactly the type of thing that I'm pointing to.
Maybe he probably did, and you're probably right, and then that was probably what got him in trouble.
Probably, so yeah. Because if you can say that something is caused by ghosts all you want, but if you can't demonstrate under the scientific method that is so and publish it, you're going to get into trouble, because you're basically publishing something very baseless. It would be like if I said that gremlins caused most computers to break down. Well, great, I can publish that, but can I demonstrate that that is in fact the case?
He was like, wash your hands and then women won't die.
Sure.
That was his point. And chlorine's working. That's it. Why hold that back?
I don't know anything.
I don't care if he's bat crap crazy. I don't care.
Yeah.
If he discovered something, we should, then that's a good thing. But
I think that you can show that washing your hands will increase safety and kind of thing. But I don't know what that's got to do with spirits. And if you tied it to the Old Testament sort of, it's sort of sanitation processes in there and said it's to stop the spirits. Well, yeah, you're going to get into trouble because you haven't demonstrated that spirits are behind it. And that's the problem.
So if I could jump in real quick.
Yeah, sure. And I do realize you had something to say about the answered prayer and things like that, power word. I do apologize, mate.
Yeah.
I just wanted to finish that with PTown.
Well, I'm actually going to go ahead and just add to that.
Sure.
To your chagrin. No, I'm just kidding. I have a peer-reviewed article I'm going to post in the private chat if you want to post it in the YouTube chat.
Sure.
But basically, we're talking about ghosts and spirits in the spiritual realm. And then, you made the assertion that putting any sort of reference to a ghost into a published or scientific paper is, not really the way to go to get people to read it. And I would agree with you. And I would say that a lot of times we run into the further research is needed kind of conclusion when we encounter peer-reviewed papers that have subject matter that we don't really understand. In this case, what I posted is a significant study regarding near-death experiences. And there are several lines of evidence that, according to science, shouldn't be possible. For example, people who have near-death experiences that are brain dead. That's kind of something that shouldn't happen. And in this paper, my favorite is and I'll read this. Near-death experiences with vision in the blind and supernormal vision. So there have been a few case reports of near-death experiences in the blind. There was a large study of 31 blind or substantially blind individuals, and I'll skip down to a specific case. Marta, a 5-year-old blind girl who accidentally walked into a lake. She slowly breathed in the water and became unconscious. A beautiful lady dressed in bright white light pulled me out. The lady looked into my eyes and asked me what I wanted. I was unable to think of anything until it occurred to me to travel around the lake, and I did so, and I saw detail that I would not have seen in real life. And I'm not going to go on, but it basically details a young girl who walked into a lake and became unconscious. And then in that period of time, she was actually able to see. And this isn't like an actual vision that's like a physical conscious vision. It's like a spiritual vision. But she says she was able to see things like leaves on trees, birds' feathers, etc., that she never had seen in her real life. Now, I understand that this paper is kind of moving down the path of trying to understand things that we don't understand, things that aren't scientifically possible. How is it possible that someone who's brain dead can have a near-death experience? How is it possible that a blind girl can have a near-death experience where she can then see with perfect vision? These are questions that there aren't good scientific answers for. Just like you mentioned earlier about the miracle, there is not a good scientific answer for that miracle. What we have is
hold on. So you're already calling it a miracle, right? So you're sort of begging the question there. You're smuggling in terms that have not been established, because your paper in no way said it was a miracle, correct?
I define miracle as something that has a statistically insignificant chance of happening.
Really?
Correct.
Okay, so your very presence on this show is a miracle then, because if any of your ancestors died before giving birth, you wouldn't be here. That's statistically improbable. And if any of my ancestors died before giving birth to me, that I wouldn't be here. The fact that I'm here is statistically improbable as well. If you multiply that by both of us sitting here, it's almost impossible for us to be sitting here talking to one another. So that's a miracle, isn't it?
I follow your logical path, and I'll agree with you. Yeah, it is a miracle that both of us are sitting here talking to each other.
Well, it sounds like that a miracle just means an event that has a low probability, which, whenever somebody wins the lotto, that's a miracle.
Depending on what the odds are, yeah, I would agree with you.
Okay, that's a very mundane, that happens every single week, somebody wins the lotto.
I would say it was a miracle if it happened to me.
Well, but it's not a miracle to the person that lost, is it?
No, it's just another day.
So miracles are purely subjective.
It's just like you said, a statistically insignificant event that occurs.
No, let's back up. You said that somebody winning the lotto would be a miracle to them, but not a miracle to somebody else. That suggests that a miracle, by your definition, is purely a subjective label that we put on low odd things. That if it's not low odd to me, then it's not a miracle, and if it is to you, then it is a miracle. It's purely subjective.
I'm sorry, I miscommunicated. What I meant is my experience playing the lottery has always ended in failure. So you winning the lottery would be a miracle, but me playing the lottery would end in failure, which would not be a miracle. That's what I meant.
Right. I still don't see how it's not subjective if it's a miracle to me when I win, but not you. And it's a miracle to you when you win, but not me.
Sorry, let me state that one more time, a bit clearer. It's my fault. So if you win the lottery, it is a miracle to everyone. It is a miracle. Me congratulating you on your miracle, on the miracle. I was saying, based on my experience playing the lottery, I would never win. So that's what I meant when I said it's not really a miracle. It's just another day, because I was assuming that I would not win. But by a mathematical definition, you would have experienced a miracle by winning, or I would congratulate you on your miraculous miraculous win. In both cases, I agree that mathematically it is a miracle.
Well, that's sort of a colloquial definition of, and don't get me wrong, I think that improbable things happen all the time. I just wouldn't refer to them. I mean, I might colloquially say, "Hey, it's a miracle that this happened," but I wouldn't be referring to what I would consider an actual miracle. It would be a metaphor, right? So, an actual miracle I would categorize as an intervention by a deity of some sort in order to make something happen that could not happen in a naturalistic world.
Yeah, I guess in that case, your definition would be subjective. I was doing more of an objective mathematical basis for mine.
Why would that be subjective?
Well, you said a deity.
Right. Any
So,
deity.
yeah, I mean, you could say the spaghetti monster. That's super subjective, right?
Why? Why is that subjective?
A deity is not
If
specific.
hang on. If the spaghetti monster actually does exist ontologically, it actually exists in reality, and it reaches down and its noodly appendages change something in the world that could not happen naturalistically, right? That could not happen by natural process. In what way would that be dependent on a mind to happen?
Well, so you said could not happen according to a natural process. That's the part that I
Right.
would say was the mathematical probability. So you could just eliminate the whole spaghetti part of that and just stick to could not happen in a naturalistic process.
Well, yes, but I think that there's a lot of supernatural things that say that things can't happen in natural process that we don't label miracles, like magic or psychic powers and things like that. I think the whole idea of the miracle is it is tied intrinsically to a god of some sort.
I guess that's your understanding.
That would be my definition, yeah. But the problem that we have is that your idea of a miracle, somebody winning the lottery, it doesn't fulfill that standard of happening by, cannot happen by naturalistic processes. I would like to know why you would define winning the lottery as a miracle when no supernatural thing seems to be involved at all. Or do you think a supernatural thing is involved?
No, I don't. I think it's, like I said, just purely based on statistical probability. That is all, period. No deity, nothing like that. Just math. That's it.
Well, it's very strange because then you're sort of calling this event that you referred to as a miracle, but I could just say, hey, it's a low probability event, and that's what you're referring to. There's no God involved. There's no supernatural involved. It's just a low probability event.
Just one last thing, PTown. I just Googled it, and the definition is a highly improbable or extraordinary event, development, or accomplishment that brings very welcome consequences. So it didn't mention a deity, and nor do I. Go ahead, PTown.
Well, I just want to
Okay,
throw it out there.
No. I want to respond to that because
you
that
get
is
the
only
you get the last
no.
word.
That's only one definition. Now, definitions are not prescriptive. So it just came, and it's interesting that you took the second definition instead of the first definition that comes up, which is an extraordinary and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore attributed to a divine agency. So why did you skip that definition?
That one.
Yes. So I see that you went to dictionary.com, definitions from Oxford Languages. The second one is a remarkable event or development that brings very welcome consequences. That's the second definition. The first definition above it says an extraordinary and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore attributed by a divine agency. And it says the miracle of rising from the grave as the example. Your definition was a remarkable event or development that brings very welcome consequences. And its example was it was a miracle that more people hadn't been killed. So do you understand that you've sort of used a definition in the context of that metaphor? It's a miracle that more people haven't been killed. So this is a problem that you've selected the definition that sort of doesn't, back up what you're saying, because you're saying it was a miracle that person healed, kind of thing, or the miracle of that person being healed by intercessory prayer. It fits my definition context a lot more than yours.
I guess you're just stating that we have two different definitions which are both accepted. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, but it's sort of the problem I have is that it makes when you say miracle, it makes it mundane. It's like, well, it's a miracle that this thing happened. Yeah, it may have been a low probability chance. Sure, I would agree with that. It was probably a very low probability chance that somebody healed spontaneously from something. Sure, yeah. Or it's a miracle their cancer went into remission. I would agree that it's a very low probability chance that their cancer went into remission. But that isn't saying that it's not natural or there's a God involved or there's anything supernatural involved. All you're doing is saying, hey, it's very low probability.
I find it ironic that you're trying to get me to use a definition that refers to a deity.
Well, you don't have to. Don't get me wrong. You don't have to. It makes me reevaluate when you have used miracle for these certain things, what you're actually referring to, because according to you, you're not referring to anything supernatural at all.
I just will restate, I'm talking about a low probability event.
Okay.
That's all. The
All
other,
right, no problem.
Yeah, the other.
So I think,
Go ahead.
Honestly, I think right now is a good time, and I think it'd be fun for the audience too if we watch that pastor video. I think it's really short, and I think it kind of bridges this topic, or that right here.
Pastor video.
It's one that I've only listened to. I don't know. Is it a video or is it just a guy talking?
It's just audio, and then there's captions in the audio. But I can post it and then set up the background. Basically, earlier we were talking about how not all miracles or not all prayers are answered. There was a pastor. I went ahead and posted it. There's a pastor. His name's Dwayne Miller. He had flu. The flu destroyed his parts of his vocal folds and made him so he had the inability to speak with a normal voice. So essentially, his voice was reduced to a whisper. So one day, 3 years after, he had seen something like, I want to say it was like 63 specialists to try to get his voice back, and nothing seemed to work. And the bottom line is they hooked him up with a special microphone that was attached to like his actual voice box. It wasn't a normal microphone, so he could talk to his congregation after being without a voice for 3 years. And you can play the video if you like, but basically he obviously for years tried and prayed and nothing was happening, and then this happened.
And before you play it, and this is something I missed, I think, is it true he isn't it in the context of him talking about how, in a sense, miracles don't happen? Is that right, Power? I mean, we're about to see.
Yeah, I'll explain what he's saying, but I think it's just play it and then I can kind of comment on it after. There should be audio. I don't hear anything though.
All right, let's try that again.
Just right at 2 minutes.
Just 2 minutes, okay. Right at 2 minutes, beautiful. All right, great. I just say the professionalism of my channel is astounding. It really is. It's fantastic. All right, let's give this another try.
To say that every single person will always be healed because Jesus died on the cross is a misinterpretation of Scripture. Not true. Won't work. Isaiah 53 doesn't talk about physical healing. I'm sorry. That's just not the context. And to impress that there causes a misinterpretation of Scripture. That's wrong. On the other hand, to say that since we don't have anything after the book of Acts, that miracles ended at the book of Acts and they never happen again is equally as wrong. Because you have put God in a box both ways, and he doesn't want to be in the box. So the psalmist says, I'm excited. Bless the Lord, O my soul. One of his benefits is he heals all of my diseases. And then in verse 4 he says, and he redeems my life from the pit. Now, I like that verse just a whole lot. I have had, and you have had in times past, pit experiences. We've all had times when our life seemed to be in a pit, in a grave. And we didn't have an answer for the pit we find ourselves in. And I don't understand this right now. I'm but overwhelmed at the moment. I'm not quite sure what to say or do.
So that's it?
I'm
Yep, you can stop it.
Yeah, so you basically got a guy with an awful voice that he's talking like this and he can't get a word out edgewise, and then suddenly he talks just fine. That's basically it.
So you're saying that Dwayne Miller essentially hoaxed his congregation for 3 years?
I don't know. I don't know. How do you know that's not the case? Have you investigated this?
Yes.
Can I just ask you a question, Mark?
Sure.
Yeah, because I think it would be a good conversation. Nice. Imagine for a second that it is true that he just didn't have a voice.
Yeah.
There's no conspiracy, and then he got it back.
Sure.
In the context, though, of him trying to preach to his people, that miracle, we can't put Jesus in a box and miracles in a box, and it's the context. What's your view on that? If this is legitimate?
Okay, so what Power did for us today is actually really good, because he showed a paper that says that we don't understand the effect that these beliefs can have on the autonomic nervous system. We don't understand how beliefs and especially fervent beliefs can have on these people, but we do know the mind can have a massive effect on the autonomic nervous system. This man may have not been faking it, but been limiting himself because of other reasons, and we know there's psychological and neurological reasons for this. So what I want to show you, I don't know if you've ever seen this.
I think we lost your audio now, Mark.
Oh, have you ever
Oh,
seen Benny
just got back.
Hinn and his stuff?
Yeah, we had talked earlier about charismatic churches, and I think he would fall in that category.
Yeah,
Right. So
I don't know who he is, but it'll be hard for me to sit through it if it is what I think it is. But
I
go
mean,
ahead.
before you go there, if you're gonna show him like knocking people down or stuff, I have an actual video that is legitimate of a paralyzed woman actually who was hit by a drunk driver and paralyzed for, I think it was 13 years, get up and walk. If that would be more appropriate than Benny.
Well, no, I want
I
to.
think we agree that there's some that aren't real, and that at least I'll speak for myself. A lot of this can be dangerous to overstep. I mean, I don't know what you're going to play, but
Well,
I don't think
that's
it's going to.
one. That's really not more.
So I just posted in the side chat. It's called Delia Knox and her walking, I guess. It's at a revival at a church that she attended, which was a revival. But basically, it's a legitimate version of what Benny Hinn was known to do. And
How do you know it's legitimate?
well, I've spent time actually reviewing each case, and there's a lot of people that are involved in each of these individual cases. There's
Really, you
many
have access to their
interviews.
medical records?
I mean, there's
Or did you watch a lot of videos on it?
I guess if you really wanted to, we could call up the woman. She does a lot of interviews, and her congregation is basically confirmed it. I mean, I don't think anyone disputes that she was hit by a drunk driver and that she was paralyzed and things like that.
No, but there have been paralyzed people that have walked again, correct?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I
Right.
think what I'm saying is in each of these cases, each of these recoveries were specifically timely while the name of Jesus was being spoken. So
Yeah, but
that
there's people that have recovered without the name of Jesus being spoken or any kind of religious belief at all, right?
do you have a paper on that?
Oh, I could probably find one, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do want to play this first.
I've actually researched. I've tried to find a peer-reviewed journal about anyone other than the name of Jesus where a miracle was documented and actually, confirmed by legitimate sources.
It's less awkward than it was. Thanks for playing this one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pass judgment and say that, Benny Hinn isn't somebody that could be filled with the Holy Spirit. But I will
Oh,
say
no,
that
Holy Spirit right here.
Oh my gosh.
I actually do know an individual who was among one of those crowds, and he did report some significant spiritual, I would say, I don't know the right word, but it was a spiritual rejuvenation, I guess you would say, something of that nature. So I did post the link for the paralyzed woman in the private chat if you want to.
Yeah, so this is a phenomenon where people actually believe that something's knocking them down, right? They actually believe that. So what happens is their body goes into a catatonia because they believe it so fervently. There is this has been documented in many different places. There's also stuff that's sort of fake martial arts, which the students believe so fervently that their master can knock them out without touching them, that they're knocked out. They're literally unconscious from this, right? I'm trying to find a video of it now.
If you could post that, I guess when you said that the catatonic state or the catatonia happens based on belief in regards to the revival or spiritual activity, I'd like to read that paper as well, or any published article you have.
Well, I do want to show this and show you the parallels between them. Yeah, there we go.
Skeptics suggest simply a form of hypnotic suggestion. It's time for a showdown.
Right. Do you notice a similarity between them, between the two? Right. The throw and then they're knocked out kind of thing. What I'm trying to get at is that these kind of things, they can have a lot to do with the mind. And you're sort of saying, well, this thing happens, and so therefore it has to be a god, or it has to be some kind of agency doing it. And you just haven't established that. You haven't connected those dots, right? People who are paraplegic, I remember one thing of a guy that would never walk again, and he walked again. And I mean, I can find examples of paraplegics walking again. I mean, are you really doubting that Jesus is the only way a paraplegic who the doctors said, we don't think they're going to be able to walk again, actually finds that they can walk?
The reason why I selected the macular degeneration paper in the beginning was because it was a disease where there is no known cure, and there's a statistically insignificant number of people that have recovered. I'm only aware of one. So that was the purpose of specifically bringing that paper to you, because saying, people recover, paralyzed people recover, things like that. I agree with you, that does happen. But in the particular instances that I've brought tonight, they are specifically regarding things that don't generally happen. Macular degeneration does not spontaneously cure.
But the paper that you brought, I sort of showed how you misinterpreted that to sort of say that is the only explanation, when it said there were other possibilities. And it also said that more research is required in the context of intercessory prayer, which you took to mean accessory prayer, intercessory prayer did that, whereas that's not what the paper was saying at all. So I have a bit of problems with your interpretation of that, especially the way you have taken that paper. And even though as a scientific paper, it's very cautious and saying, hey, this happened and it was in this context. And I acknowledge that it was in that context. And I acknowledge that it's very interesting and we should be researching it more. But you've taken that as sort of the researchers saying, this is the cause, this intercessory prayer healed this person, when they said nothing of the sort. They said that we don't understand the effect that intercessory prayer has upon the autonomic nervous system of these people, and that needs more research. What I don't understand is how you get from one to the other.
Quite simply, in that paper, it said specifically following intercessory prayer. In the video with the pastor, he was talking about Jesus. And instances of these things that happen specifically with relation to Jesus are common, in my opinion, from what I've seen. So the paper that you're referencing, that I referenced earlier, says following intercessory prayer, macular degeneration was spontaneously healed. Those are the factors. I draw the conclusion that the intercessory prayer was the catalyst. And there is a physical factor. When healing happens, there is a physical component. So, looking into what specifically was healed within the eye and things like that, that's what the paper did. It went into what was the actual physical change that this woman had experienced in her eyes.
Right.
So it's not like the healing, or it's not like the prayer happens and then it's just like a magical thing. It actually does repair the physical tissue. So that's all I'm saying, is there's a direct correlation
Ah,
from the
no,
paper.
there isn't. No, there isn't. And they never said there was. They never said there was, because when you start talking about correlation, you're talking about statistics, right? So don't get this wrong. You are talking about statistics now. And as I pointed out, there are hundreds of people that have prayed for their eyesight to be restored, and it hasn't been restored. So when you say there's a correlation, that correlation does not exist. What you are doing right now is something called, what I call the Maddox methodology. What you basically have done is read a paper, picked out the parts that you think agree with you, make your own conclusion from that, put that at the end of the paper, or in your mind, put that at the end of the paper saying, hey, that's the conclusion of the paper, and then say that the paper makes the conclusion, when it does not do that. You have to be very careful when reading these documents that the conclusion that you're getting is the same as the people that have written the paper. And I'm really sorry, Power Word, it's not, because they never said there was a correlation between intercessory prayer and this particular ailment cleaning up. They never said that the intercessory prayer actually caused this ailment to clear up. They were just examining this spontaneous regeneration in the context of intercessory prayer. They never attributed it as the cause. And in fact, they went on to say that more research is required in order to find out what effect intercessory prayer has on the autonomic nervous system. And they said that.
I think, I think we can agree to disagree there.
Well, I went ahead and just posted the paper, part of the paper that I'm talking about.
Right.
It
I mean,
says, following
So
proximal
yes.
intercessory prayer event.
Here's where you're wrong, right? So it says following a PIP, or a intercessory prayer event, her vision was spontaneously restored, right? What you're taking from that is that event was the cause. The paper isn't saying that. They said following the event. And what you're doing is a post hoc ergo propter hoc. It means, what that means is it comes after, therefore, that event, right? So you're basically going, well, this event happened, this happened afterwards, therefore the previous event caused this one. And that's not what they're saying. It says following a PIP event. It doesn't say due to the PIP event. It doesn't say it was caused by that event. And I challenge you to find where it says that.
From the beginning, I've quoted this, and that is the correlation. Following
you put the quote
a PIP
in here.
event.
I'll put it in chat so everyone can read it. It says following an event, it was spontaneously restored. It doesn't say due to the event. It just says following. Now you are using confirmation bias to read that as that was the cause, but that isn't what the paper says. And as I've said before, scientists are very specific in their language. So what they're saying is that after this event, this happened. You're saying it's the cause. That's not what the paper's saying. The paper's saying we need to research more into the effects of intercessory prayer upon the autonomic nervous system, so we can find out what exactly caused them to spontaneously regenerate. And I'll post that so chat can see it.
Just a quick question.
I have a question too, but I think if we keep on going back and forth on this same subject, I don't think we're going to go anywhere.
Well, no, I'm just pointing out how you're sort of misreading the scientific paper, because you want it to be the intercessory prayer event as the cause, but that's not what the paper says. And this is what I find that theists do all the time. They read the paper and then they take this idea that the paper is supporting them when the paper says, hey, we don't know, we need more research. And the idea that we need more research in no way supports that it was some kind of intervention by a God that did it. And it nowhere says it was an intervention by a God that did it. But you take it as that is what the scientist is saying, when they clearly do not say that.
So she was blind for 12 years.
Yes.
And I imagine there was a number of things that her and her husband did. And for 12 years, her vision just got consistently worse. So
Okay.
the phrase following a proximal intercessory prayer event to me means that there was a prayer that occurred, and this was not something that was common. It was an event that to this couple.
Intercessory prayer is very common among
I'm saying
people.
for this couple. And
Okay.
so in this 12 years, this blindness culminated in a single event that was the prayer. And then it wasn't healed gradually over time. It was instantly healed. So she was able to see instantly when the prayer finished. So to say that for 12 years, this woman lived her life and, we don't know, what happened in those 12 years.
But you're
And then-
claiming to know what happened. You're claiming to know what happened. That's the difference.
Yeah, her vision got worse. That's what happened.
Yeah, you're claiming to. You say we don't know what happened in between, but you've gone on to claim you know what happened. Do you understand that those? No. Do you understand that those comments are completely contradictory? You can't say we don't know what happened and then say, but all of these things happened.
I'm not following your.
I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Yeah. So the thing is, and don't get me wrong, I completely think that more investigation is definitely warranted with something of this significance. The paper does posit other plausible explanations, like a misdiagnosis from another condition and this other one that has been known to clear up. Or this could be a case of this is the only known case of that clearing up. But let's be serious about this. There's been other cases where doctors have said, we have never seen somebody recover from this particular illness. And they have. Cancer goes into remission. People with paraplegia do walk again. It does happen. Very, very rarely. And if that's your criteria for a miracle, then I guess by your definition, that's a miracle. But you're sort of saying that the cause was intercessory prayer and that the paper says that when it doesn't say that. And so I think that a lot more investigation has to go into how that actually occurred instead of just saying, hey, they prayed, it healed. That has to be the cause. Because just because one thing follows another doesn't make that one thing the cause. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. That's called post hoc ergo propter hoc. It is a logical fallacy.
I have a question for you then, Mark. If you personally witnessed somebody die, out, done, gone, dead.
The body. Whose body? The body.
A body.
Anybody.
Somebody was. You go ahead and pick one. And let's say a childhood friend of yours that you know, just so you can imagine it, okay? He's done. Yeah. He's gone, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say a day later, for whatever reason, the body was still around you, and he becomes alive again.
Sure.
Okay. Would you consider that to be, would you attribute that to God?
Well, I think it'd be pretty good evidence, and certainly you would want to see if there was anything happening that is inexplicable by science. And it depends on there's a lot of ifs going into there. If it were in a meat locker kind of thing where the body was preserved, maybe not. But if it was just sitting around decaying and then suddenly that decay reversed and got up, I think that would be strong evidence for a God.
Right. But you wouldn't feel comfortable putting it in like a research paper though, because we still don't know what it is, right? We can't attribute it to God directly.
I would put it in a research paper if I had researched it. Like, so if I had seen this happen and I was going to research it, I would, present all medical records before the event, all medical records after the event. I would show that there was no intervention by anybody else. I would show that, all of the facts, because don't forget, I'm doing nothing but facts in a research paper. I'm not putting in my personal beliefs. And that's the problem. You guys are putting in your personal beliefs.
Well, I'm asking,
method, and you cannot put in your personal beliefs.
Now, okay, so this analogy, right, of this friend of yours that died, and a day later he's now alive again, and you witnessed this.
Sure.
Now, let's say that someone just commanded in the name of Jesus, and that was what, and then your friend was now, the decay is gone, and now he's alive again.
Sure.
You personally, not would you would you believe in God then?
I think that would be really strong evidence. I probably would if that happened. If from my understanding of the way that neural decay work, that would be something that would convince me there was something supernatural at work. However, I've never seen that. I've never seen anything of that magnitude. And this sort of appeal to, well, this person recovered from a disease or something that we think is unrecoverable. Well, I'm sorry, but that isn't on the same level as me personally witnessing somebody die in front of me, decay, then come back to life. I think the two things are magnitudes different.
And asking, like, witnessing someone, do this in the name of Jesus and commanding it, and then it happening, would that impact? Would
No.
you think? No. Would you believe in Jesus then?
I think it would be evidence towards it, but I don't think you could conclusively say that that's the case. I think that it would be evidence of the supernatural, but I'm not sure that crying out for Jesus would cause these things to happen. I know that Islamic people, sort of announce their own miracles as well. They say claiming something in the name of Allah made somebody see, or claiming something in the name of Allah helped somebody walk. They do the same claims.
Well, I know, and I think that this is what's fascinating, and this is why I've been calling in, the different atheist streams, because the same way that you find, the stuff that you find fascinating, I find it fascinating that even in the situation where you have someone that alive, then died, and then somebody who says, commands in the name of Jesus that he comes alive and he is regenerated, and in front of you, and you witness this whole, if in this hypothetical situation, even if this happened, you still would have doubt. Yeah.
Well, PTown, we can go over hypotheticals all day long. Hypothetically, if the sky wrote, Mark believe in God in stars kind of thing, we can go into these hypotheticals all we want. Until it actually happens, I won't know for sure what I'll believe, because there's so many different unknowns that are surrounding that. There's so many different things that could have happened, right? If somebody dies in front of me and then they come back to life, there are cases in the past where people have died, they've gone into a very, very low torpor state, and then they've been revived. In fact, we found, scratchings on the undersides of coffins. So it all depends on the circumstances of who's examined the body, what they've seen. And I'm no expert on death myself. Like, how would I know that person is actually dead and not in a sort of torpor state where their pulse and their heart rate is so slow that I can't detect it? Because we have had problems with detecting who's died over the years. But you're talking about someone who's actually decayed away, like wasted away and then, come back to life. but we haven't got any examples of that happening. So we can say in this hypothetical where all these things happened, well, a bright light appears to me, and like Paul on the Damascus Road, or the stars write my name, and that God believes in me, or that colors erupt from the ground and millions of people see it. We can talk about these hypotheticals all day long, but until they happen, they're just hypotheticals.
Would you like for those to happen to you?
Right, power. This is why I'm talking to you, and I have a connection.
Yeah, I mean,
you and I are on the same page.
Yeah. So hang on. Let me answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like there to be a God. I think that to have some sort of evaluation of what is right and wrong, to punish the wicked and to reward the good, is such a nice thought in principle. However, I see nothing of why that is true. There is nothing to point to a God, and a lot we have that says that a God doesn't exist, that a mind without a brain that is somehow disembodied. I don't believe that, sort of on a provisional basis, because there is no examples of minds without brains. A mind seems to be an emergent property of the brain's neurochemistry, the synapses and all of its workings together. And we do not have any minds without brains, just none whatsoever. As soon as you get rid of a mind, a brain, the mind is gone. So I think there is no God because of that reason. The whole idea of a mind sans a brain in somewhere outside of the universe it seems incoherent to me with what I know a mind to be.
Well,
hold on.
Yeah.
Would you like a Damascus Road experience?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
Well, the question is, why hasn't God done a Damascus Road experience if indeed he wants me to believe in him?
Well, here's the thing. In John, the book of John, he actually did. There's a disciple named Thomas. A lot of people know him as Doubting Thomas.
Sure.
But he said, I will not believe until I have seen his hands and the prints of the nails, and put my finger thrust my hand into his side. I will not believe. And then 8 days later, Jesus appeared to him and said, Thomas, put in your hand into my side and believe. So Jesus actually knows there are people that need physical evidence.
Yeah.
And
sure. So does God want me to believe in him?
He wants you to want
yes.
to. He wants you to want to, Mark, because in the beginning.
Hold on. I don't understand what that means. He wants me to want to believe in him.
So I can explain that.
Because that doesn't answer my question whether he does want me to in fact believe in him, or he doesn't care if I believe in him or not. So that doesn't answer that question. So
just to finish this line of questioning, and then I will answer that. Mark, tonight, the Jesus of the gospel has been presented to you, and I will pray that you get an experience like Thomas.
Look,
with regard
Howard, stop. You're not here to preach at me, okay? So this whole thing about, God has been presented, nothing of the sort's been presented to me. Okay, nothing of the sort. You've presented a paper with a sort of indeterminate conclusion, and you've presented your arguments. You're preaching now that Jesus has been presented, and stop. It's not why we're here. Okay, just understand that. Now move on. So most people think, the problem of evil, etc. Why does God let bad things happen to good people, things like that? And the answer is, hold on, Howard. I'm really sorry, mate. I haven't brought up the problem of evil once. I don't know what this has got to do. I understand that that's sort of an argument that atheists put across, but I haven't referenced it once.
Sorry.
I mean, no, that's okay. I can talk about it, but I haven't referenced that once today. And I don't think and you're sort of that has so much stuff around it. Like, is it a omnibenevolent God, omnipotent God? Like, there's so much there that you're sort of just bringing up the spur of the moment. What I'm interested in and what I asked was, does God in fact wish me to believe in him?
The answer is yes. And
Right.
that was kind of foundational for explaining why. So the answer is yes. God wants you to believe in him. God wants you to love him. And
Okay.
there always has to be a choice for that to occur.
Right.
So if there was no choice, if there was
There's
no
free will,
apple,
right? Free will kind of thing,
yes,
right?
but it wasn't
Right.
necessarily that it was granted, it was the choices were created. So God gave all of us choices. And based on those choices, we can either choose to love him and believe him or not. And that's it. That's the purpose
Okay.
of our existence.
So because I don't believe in God, that means that God has failed to convince me. He's actually failed. Um, the problem I have with that is that God is supposed to be infallible, and he's failed to do this thing that he wants to do. Now, regardless or not of free will, he actually could demonstrate himself in a way better means that to me than just sort of these things that could or could not be God, like these things where they say, hey, we need more study. He could have a doubting Thomas thing with me where he appears and says, hey, feel my sides, or feel whatever. I could have a Damascus Road experience. So the weird thing here is that God has the power to provide better evidence than he has not done so, and therefore failed to convince me of something he wishes to convince me of. And I want to know why that is.
It's because you've failed to ask and pray and ask. I don't know why God did it that way, Mark, but it was pleasing to him.
How do you know that I haven't prayed in my life? What gives you that sense? Because I have.
Well, sorry, I just kind
Of
of
course
butted
I
in
have.
there. There's a
I've
broader.
prayed. I've gone to church in the past. Like, people have said, hey, you're an atheist. Do you want to come to church? And I'm not one of those people that go, oh, no, Christians are this. No, if I want to at least open my mind to the possibility of a God, I went to the church and did the whole church thing, because I'm not the kind of person that says, well, I won't entertain that. I will entertain the concept, but that's a far cry from me believing that it is true. I'll entertain any concept, but that doesn't mean I'll believe it.
You can tell that to God when you ask him to reveal himself to
Yeah,
you.
PTown, that doesn't sway me in any way, kind of thing. That isn't what sways me as to believe there's God. But you're saying, hey, you can tell him and he's going to be mad, doesn't make any traction with me. But what we've got here is a God that wants to do something, wants to convince me that they exist, has failed to convince me that they exist, could do more, and has the power to convince me to do more to convince me to exist, right? So that they have that power, and apparently they want to, but for some reason has not done it. And that's weird to me, because there's nothing stopping an omnipotent being, somebody with or an agent with infinite power, convincing everybody that they exist. There's nothing stopping them, right?
So the reason why we were created was for love, to love God. If God comes down to everyone and says, I demand everyone worship me now, you're right.
Hold
Everyone,
on. Sorry to interrupt, but I never said that God could force me to worship him, right? Me worshiping God and me believing that they exist are two separate things. I could believe that you exist, Power Word, but I don't worship you. You're going a step too far there. There's nothing stopping God from convincing me that they exist without demanding worship.
Yeah, I was going one step further to make the point that it's kind of it defeats the purpose of someone seeking out God and looking into like nature, the Bible, things like this, if God just appears. I mean, there's no kind of like relationship that develops from that. So that's what I'm trying to say is it's that relationship that God seeks. So the appearance of God, which removes all doubt, kind of defeats that whole pursuit.
Yeah, so the problem there is, and this is a problem I have with seeking God. It kind of suggests to me that you have to believe already, because I have, in the past prayed and said, "Hey, if there's a God, can you show yourself to me? Please show yourself to me, God," kind of thing. I have done that, and nothing happened. Nothing. And I have gone to a church and done all of the church things that they requested of me. The problem here is that when you seek something that you already believe is true, you're going to find it, and that is confirmation bias. It's why we don't bring our personal beliefs into the scientific method, because we always do find that which we're biased towards believing. And that's the problem. You sound like you're sort of saying, hey, you've got to seek him while believing already. And that doesn't work for me, because that's not how I form my beliefs. I believe things that have been demonstrated to be true, not things that I wish were true.
When you said that you did all the things that were asked of you when you attended church, did you get like baptized? Is that what you're saying?
Nope, just went to church.
Okay. So I guess kind of there is a degree of individual requirement that comes into play here. I'm sure some people that read the papers or watch the videos that were shown tonight might believe just based on that. And their criteria for belief would be less than your criteria for belief. So, I mean, that is a factor. Have you considered that?
Well, that would be a really low bar. I mean, if you're appealing to logical fallacies to base your beliefs on, that's a terrible that's a terrible thing to base your beliefs on. Same with sort of having confirmation bias. If you're confirming that which you wish to be true, that is a terrible thing to base your beliefs on, because I could believe all kinds of things that I wish were true, but that doesn't make them true.
If I was in, for example, Dwayne Miller's church, and I know that he lost his voice for several years, and I was in the audience when he recovered it, there's probably a good chance that I would believe based on that, because I would have witnessed a legitimate miracle, right?
Yeah, and that's why these people in those sort of congregations get suckered by scam artists all the time. I mean, I talked to a guy sort of in my area who sort of said, yeah, I've seen a miracle at church. We were at church and this guy had one leg longer than the other. And then, the guy prayed over him and the legs became the same length. And that's an old trick. That's the leg lengthening trick that they use by slipping the shoe slightly off, and fool tons of people in the congregation, just fool them outright. And that kind of thing, like magicians do exist. They can do things which are totally inexplicable, completely inexplicable. You cannot even begin to imagine the things that they can show you. And none of it is true. It's all somebody preying on, not gullibility, but your willingness to believe what you want to be true. That's how con people work. That's why the Nigerian scam worked for years and years and years until it became a meme and everyone was aware of it. It was because they prey on what you wish to be true. And that's where your problems start, because there's all kinds of things that I wish to be true. And I have to be aware that if I wish them to be true, I have this bias that leads me down that track to say, hey, I really want it to be true. As scientists and skeptics, we have to be careful to separate what actually is from what we want, because that way leads being conned, and that's where it leads.
So it is your assertion that all proposed miracles that occur in a church setting are scams?
The leg lengthening one is the one that I would say is definitely a scam. That's been well documented as a scam and how they do it. Not all of them, but I think the possibility is there. I wouldn't assert I know for sure, but how do you eliminate that possibility without having analyzed and because I mean this has been done for other things, right? We know of these psychic readers that contact the dead, and we know how they operate, and that definitely is a scam. Like people, like these religious people that sort of, we get in touch with your previous loved ones and things, and former employees have revealed that they go around collecting information about them. And we know things like Barnum statements exist. They're probabilistic statements that people make. And astrology does the same. They sort of say, hey, you'll meet a tall, dark stranger kind of thing, knowing that that statement will probably be true for just about everybody. And, you know, you can hit enough with those vague statements that it seems like you are reading people. It's the same way cold reading works, where people use clues to make statements about you and sort of think that you're reading their mind. But it's not the case, right? You're aware of all of these techniques, right, Power Ward?
Yeah. I guess what I was trying to get to was, if you say that I know this leg lengthening trick is a scam, therefore all miracles or all proposed miracles are scams.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I never said that. I said there is the possibility that all of them are scams. I never said they definitely were, did I?
Yeah, so that's what I was just pointing out, was if you had, that would be kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So to go back to the original point, if Dwayne...
Well, first hang on a second, Powerwood. First you've got to prove there's a baby there and not just bathwater, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if Dwayne Miller, for example, did what he said he did, and he saw 63 specialists and over 300 doctors, he could produce those specific medical records. And if that occurred and he produced those medical records, then you would say this is not a scam, correct?
I don't know. The medical records would have to have something in them, because there is so much unknowns in that, where the medical records could have had some damage on his larynx. Pneumonia doesn't usually cause this kind of reaction, that people go, lose their voice. I don't know enough about it to say that it's an unknown, but it's not the usual effect of pneumonia, right?
So this is kind of going into what I was talking about with your specific requirement for belief.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, right, is what you are bringing are hypotheticals, right? You're saying, if this happens, and if this happens, and if he produces these records, and if it can be demonstrated, demonstrate it. We can talk about hypotheticals all day long. I can talk about the hypothetical if we find that his medical records said, hey, there appears to be, during the later stages, there was some damage, and it sort of later on there was no damage, and it appears to be something else. Would you disbelieve in God at that point?
So I presented the audio.
Well,
that's
hold on.
Partially.
Answer my question. Would you disbelieve in God at that point?
If the medical records were fraudulently produced?
Sure.
Is that what you said? No,
Yeah.
I would not disbelieve in God. This would
Why
just
not?
be another scam, as you have said, that are
Right.
abundant.
So what would cause you to disbelieve in God? Because we know these scams happen, right? Religious people run scams like the talking to the dead, and they're actually collecting information. So if there's these scams are out there, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me, if every single time we don't know how they're done is confirmation of a God, why is it that every single fake isn't evidence against it? Why is that the case?
Okay, so that was 2 questions. The first
Sure,
one
sure.
was
Sorry. Yeah.
what would it take for you to
Mhm.
disbelieve in God?
Yeah.
And, for me, that is an impossibility because of my personal experience, which is I had a completely broken toe healed, miraculously, instantly. So, I've had a personal experience like Thomas. And because of that experience, there's no going back to disbelief. And the second question was how, how, what abundance of scams would impact my belief, correct?
Mhm.
And the answer would be none of them could possibly impact my
Right.
specific belief, but I could see where someone like you or someone on your channel or someone who is generally familiar with these scams could easily say, you know, this guy obviously is, knocking people down or whatever.
Right.
Therefore, this is all a scam. I could see that happening, and I do know individuals who have actually made that conclusion.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily saying, "Hey, all of them are scams." I think it's just basically there's been enough that I have to open myself up to the possibility that some of these things that you're pointing at can be scams. That people will do these things. As much as I wish they wouldn't, they can do these things. And it's very hard to determine with very little evidence that when something's a scam and when something's actually something else. But I think we've probably got to wrap up. I'll look for questions, but I'll just basically point out, and I think this is a good place to end it, that nothing would convince you that you are wrong about a God. Absolutely nothing. And that's okay, that's your decision. But I'm over here saying that all it would take is some reliable, reasonable, demonstrable evidence and links from an event to a God being or to some kind of intervention by a deity at all. So I can kind of say that, I'm being open minded and saying, hey, I am open to being convinced. And you're 100% closed minded going, no, there's nothing that would ever change my mind. And to me, that's a dangerous position to take because thinking that you can't be wrong doesn't mean that you're automatically right. All it means is you think you can't be wrong.
Yeah, I think I'm a special case based on, a broken bone generally doesn't heal in 1 minute back together. So that to me is an experience that you know, I experienced, and there were some circumstances around it. So it wasn't like I came to my conclusion based on a logical assumption or based on some type of, research or based on, seeing some church miracle. My conclusion was based on personal experience, a
Okay,
hundred
so how
percent.
how do you know that a god did that?
Uh, well, just like the article I presented, the following statement, following proximal intercessory prayer, that's
Mhm.
exactly how I experienced healing in the same way.
So how do you know that autonomic nervous system suggestion? It wasn't an autonomic nervous system suggestion that made you not feel the pain, believe it so hard that your brain shut down that pain response, and then it just healed. How do you know that?
Bones don't heal in seconds.
How did you know that it healed in seconds?
it was no longer broken.
How do you know it was broken?
It was visibly broken.
Wasn't just dislocated?
No.
How do you know that it was broken? Was the bone protruding through the skin? How did you know the bone was broken?
So it was, yes, there was physical protrusion, we'll say, not actual skin broken. And then it was actually swollen to maybe 5 times the regular size.
Well, that would happen with dislocation as well. Dislocation will make a bulge where the bone has dislocated from the socket, say, and it is forcing the skin to raise. What is the difference between that and what you saw?
So this is kind of going down a path that it's kind of silly. I mean,
what do you mean it's kind of silly? Why is it
swelling? Swelling doesn't reduce and entirely disappear in seconds. Bones don't magically heal in seconds. It just doesn't happen. So, but I would say
does.
So this was a crushing injury.
Okay.
But I would say this, so going to the computer science kind of field, you do network troubleshooting, correct?
Well, I mean, that's not all I do, but yes, troubleshooting is a part of, it's a part of what all computer technicians do, as well as network engineers, as well as, anybody involved in diagnosing a problem with any kind of system does troubleshoot. I presume if your background is there too, you would do troubleshooting as well, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I do all day, every day. Right. And we'll have our users call in and they'll complain about the network is slow, right? I'll be trying to do something with this application and the network is slow. And the first thing I'll ask them is, well, exactly what time was it? So I can get a packet capture of the network data and I can look at the actual communication pairs. Right. So for my troubleshooting purposes and my understanding of causation, there's always a timestamp where something occurred and there's a event or there's a communication problem at this time. I wouldn't ask for a communication path from days ago. I would want to know specifically what was directly before this slowness event and then during the slowness event for me to get the crucial data. In the same way, the paper said following proximal intercessory prayer. My experience was following proximal intercessory prayer. So I make the same kind of judgment call.
Okay. No, I get you. Is an event preceding a slowdown necessarily the cause of that event, of that slowdown?
And according to network performance, if you have a packet capture and you're capturing data before the slowness and then during the slowness, the answer is yes. The specific communication pairs.
No, not before and after. Did the event that you record on your packet capture, is that event necessarily the cause of that event?
So each part of the capture has a timestamp and each part has a delta. So you'll know what's slow and that communication starts before and after. So yes, to answer your question, you will know exactly based on the protocol, based on the encryption type, based on a lot of other things, what part of that communication path is slow. Therefore, you'll be able to tell why it's slow.
Yeah, but the event itself isn't necessarily the cause, right? The event can be another symptom of the cause that you're looking for, correct?
So to get a little bit more granular, let's say right now, so you're in Australia, you have a application that's doing video streaming to a server. It looks like it's a StreamYard server. Let's say all of a sudden the StreamYard server starts being choppy and you sound like a robot. I would grab those packets and I would download them and I would put them into Wireshark and I would look at them and I would say, hey, he wasn't choppy at this point. He was choppy at this point. And then there would be delta times attached to what specifically was being transmitted at certain times. And those delta times would be larger and that would designate slowness. So the slowness event, which would be specifically what I was looking for, would have initial packets that were not slow and then became slow.
Yes.
So those initial packets would be the cause of that slowness. What was it that preceded the slowness? And that preceding packet capture, whatever protocol it is probably port 443. I can't tell if it's encrypted, but the bottom line is within that, there would be an SSL encryption decryption process, and you would have certain ciphers and key transfers. So you would unencrypt that data. And then within that, you could say, okay, well, here's the problem. There was a certificate update on the StreamYard server at this time, which increased the amount of SSL payload and processing power needed to actually transmit this whole, video communication path. Does that make sense?
Right, but it doesn't actually tell you the cause. It tells you the packets that come through that are what happened, how it happened, but it may have been something on my end that I initiated. I may have been the cause of that, correct?
Yeah, and if you were the cause of it, it would show up as what's called 0 windows, and that would be evident in the packet capture as well. So what I'm trying to say is all the data from point A to point B over a certain period of time would tell me what was the cause.
But it doesn't tell you whether I caused it, or whether some other user caused it, or whether somebody spoofed my network, correct?
No, it would. So there's different...
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. If somebody spoofed my Wi-Fi and got onto my Wi-Fi and hacked in from my IP address, there is no way from PacketShark you can tell the difference between those two packets going out.
Yeah,
all it would list is...
A spoofed address would be 0.0.0 from your local host. Your address would be whatever. If you have a local network, it would be...
No. If someone got onto my network, right, breached my Wi-Fi or breached my well, I don't know how they'd breach my LAN, but if they breached and got onto my network, correct, there's no way you could tell if that was me or somebody else, correct?
No. So what they would
be
doing...
So if they get onto my network and they come up with, so I'm using a 192.168.0.x, 255
right,
C-class network, basically.
Yep.
If they got onto that network and they brute forced my Wi-Fi password and they got onto my network and they sent something as me, you would have no way to tell that was me or not.
Yeah. So your IP address would be your IP address. They would be using a broadcast address, which would come across as a different IP address. It would be a 0.0.0 on your local router.
No, they wouldn't, because they would just gain an address from DHCP.
If you already have the address, there would be an IP address conflict.
Why would DHCP not assign them address when they log on to my Wi-Fi network?
It would, but it wouldn't. So
it would. Thank you. So they're not using a broadcast address, correct?
No. So your lease would have to expire for your DHCP, whatever your router, to actually deliver a DHCP address. Spoofing is not assigned by DHCP. It's changed at the like the layer 3. So they spoof your address at a higher level than the network level.
But you get my point. You couldn't tell whether it was me or whether it was my wife or whether it was somebody on the network, right? You couldn't tell.
And I'm saying I could.
You're saying you could. So
yes.
Somebody using, say, my computer, right?
Yeah.
Someone using my computer, you think you can tell through Wireshark whether I sent it or somebody else sent it?
Oh, you know what?
If
I
my
understand.
wife is using my computer for some reason, and this is sort of annoying me because it's just such a ridiculous statement, that you think through Wireshark you can tell whether it's my wife or me sitting at the computer is quite frankly absurd to the highest degree.
So I understand the problem. If I was going to capture data, it would be from your local router, and that would show me the local traffic. If I was on a StreamYard server and I was capturing data from StreamYard, in that case, that address would come across as whatever address you would have. So it
Right, the
really,
public address, right?
it would come across as whatever your ISP
The
has.
public address, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so you cannot necessarily tell the cause of. You can tell the how, but you can't tell the who. You can't tell how that occurred. You can't tell me who actually initiated that slowdown or who is responsible for that slowdown. All you can say is this is the event that happened. And the whole idea that you can look at a public address and tell that whether it's me or not is completely ludicrous. It's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard.
well, it would have your MAC address, which would be specific to your PC. So
Yeah, and if my wife is using my PC, you cannot tell who sent it, right?
wait, you're saying if your wife was like sitting in the chair and using,
Sitting at this chair and using my PC, you cannot tell who did it, right?
no, Wireshark can't
Of
determine
course
who's
it
typing
can't.
on the
Of
keyboard.
course it can't. And it also cannot really tell if you do MAC spoofing that is not me. If they acquire my local IP address, you can't tell it at the router level. And if they acquire that up at the StreamYard level, you can't tell because the public IP address is the return address. You can't tell whether that is me on that network or somebody with my MAC address, correct?
Yeah, especially if it's encrypted, you'd need the decryption key.
Right.
Yeah, so depending where the packets come from, yeah. That was the misunderstanding.
Yes. So yeah. So and I mean, I don't know why outside of the situation you would assume you've got access to the internal workings of this person. That's what I'm taking the local addressing system to be. It's the internal workings of that network. We are observing from outside these people. Like with your toe, I don't have access to what happened. I don't have access to who is there and what's happening. All I can do is sit up the StreamYard side and observe the things to come in. But I can't say who did that because I don't have enough information. I just don't. There can be a million things, and this is the problem with hackers that are using their parents' connection and things like that. And their parents get pinged for doing this stuff. SWAT team turns up to their door because they can't tell it's not the parents. They can only tell that, hey, that's where they live. There's a lot of unknowns in here that you just want to ignore, Power Word. And I think that's a massive problem because instead of going like the paper that you presented said, hey, we need to research more into this and find out what's actually going on. You're sort of going, well, I believe in God. That's my belief. So I'm going to follow that belief and make this conclusion. And don't get me wrong, you're allowed to do that. But I don't see that as a good way of getting objective information about things. It's probably the worst way I can think of. If I had a person, like, because I used to believe in astrology and aromatherapy and things like that. And my personal belief caused me to think that these things they put out saying, oh, this will happen to you, you'll have a great day, you will have some struggles today, but then I thought that was predicting the future, and it's not. It's just, they just put out, you'll have struggles today and then overcome it. And a lot of people go through that enough so it looks like they're telling the future, but they're not. So that's why I sort of say I know the dangers of following what you wish to be true.
Just for the record, I stated it was my personal experience as the
Sure.
reason for believing in these papers. And the papers themselves, in my opinion, have kind of like a Boolean logic pattern to them where like the person had this, the blindness was there, then there was proximal intercessory prayer, then there was healing. So that's the correlation that I draw. So it's only those two things.
Yeah, but that's a far cry from reading packets, because you're going into the nuts and bolts of it. That would be something that we would love to do, is go into how did this intercessory prayer cause this thing to heal. But unfortunately, we can't do that in the way that you're talking about, going into Packet Tracer and examining the actual packets coming through. We can't go into her medical history and examine exactly what happened, can we?
Well, the medical history was actually in the paper, but the reason why I brought up the
but
network,
we can't do the same as we would go into Packet Tracer and examine the packets coming through, correct?
So you mean like, can we see her, the genome related to her eye?
Right. Can we see
no.
the actual intercessory prayer at real time? Because Packet Shark's real time, right?
It's
Wireshark, sorry, is real time.
you can save captures at any time.
Right, so it's real time. You can save captures at any time to make a real time analysis of the packets coming through the network, right?
Yeah, I think.
But what we can't do is do that with somebody that's been, said a prayer at home, right? Because it's only at home, right? That she said this prayer at home and was apparently miraculously healed. We can't look at a real time scenario to outline all of that. So the whole idea that you're sort of saying, hey, well, we can use Wireshark for networks, it doesn't translate into, well, we can see what happened with this intercessory prayer, because we can't. I'm really sorry, but we can't do that. We don't have a Wireshark for miracles. I'm sorry.
It was just a time stamp link. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry if I didn't say it properly, but
no, that's okay. That's okay. I know what you're talking about. I'm aware that you can sort of look over real time through the packets flowing through the network and say, hey, this is where this occurred. That packet is what was the event that caused it. But we can't do that with real life events. We've got to separate what we can do on network and with computers from what we can do in the real world. And I think as an analogy, it's fine, but it doesn't translate to, well, we know this prayer definitely caused that. Because in the real world, that's not, we can't use Wireshark for that.
The idea, I mean, yeah, your correlation of Wireshark to a real-time analysis of an eye being healed, yeah, obviously that's not possible. It was more on my part. The reason why I brought up Wireshark in the first place was just because there is a cause and effect, and you stated very clearly, causation and correlation are two totally different things, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm drawing a logical conclusion. That's all. And I think there are a lot of similarities with like the body and computer systems. Do you see those similarities?
There is uncanny similarities between certain things in the body and computer systems, yes, but there are extreme differences as well, obviously. I think that as far as computer systems go, it has a level of engineering and purpose that the body seems to lack in certain places. So I think that you can make an analogy between, say, a computer and the brain, or computers and the way that certain, organic machines work. But I think it falls down when you actually try to make a direct analogy between the two. I think they're good ways of describing the body, but not analogous.
I think we could have like a very in-depth, long discussion about this. I feel like maybe it would be best for another time.
Yeah, it's coming up on 2 hours and 24 minutes. So yeah, I'll leave it there, and we can take that up some other time. Do you have anything to add before we go? Any shout outs or what you're doing, or anything to say at all?
So Beamsy in the chat says, I am just glad they are staying away from geology.
Yes.
There was just one quick thing from your initial conversation with PTown that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
It was a long kind of name one thing in the Bible that's actually scientific. And I just wanted to bring up this one thing very quickly. It is related to geology. So in the creation story, to make it very simple, on the fourth day, the sun was created. And on the third day, the day before the fourth day, plants were created. So photosynthesis wasn't possible until the fourth day. So the oxygen would all of a sudden appeared on the fourth day, according to Genesis. And in geology, there's this thing called the Great Oxygenation Event. It's a scientific fact that oxygen appeared in our atmosphere all of a sudden. This is explained by the Genesis series of events. And according to evolution and evolutionary theory, it's one of those things that is unexplained, just kind of like the Cambrian explosion. It's a lesser known thing. So we don't have to discuss it, but I just wanted to bring it up for the viewers and for Beamsy.
Yeah, and without, I'm sure I'm going to make Beamsy mad, and we're both probably going to make Beamsy mad. But the Great Oxygenation Event, when they say it happened all of a sudden, they're talking geologically, also hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions.
Agreed.
So a long time frame. They're not talking, hey, between day 1 and day 2, suddenly there was oxygen. That's not what they're saying. So
100% agree.
Yeah, so I don't think that explains the Great Oxygenation Event, because the time frame that they're talking about is not 1 day. Okay, I've got a question. Jay says, are you able to share the link of Power Red? I'm not sure which paper you're talking about, Jay. Probably the first one, I guess.
There was the other one on near-death experiences.
Oh, maybe. Did I put that one up? No, I posted the near-death experience. Maybe it was the other one, the one on the healing of the eye. I'll put that one in there in case that's what you're after, Jay. I'm so sorry, Jay. I missed that completely. I'm kind of really focused on the conversation. I'm sorry, mate. But I'll put that one in there as well. But just be aware that unless you've got sort of access through university or PubMed access, you might only see the abstract and not the entire.
It is cited in a few other journals, so there is a way to get there.
Yeah. I'm just looking through for any other questions. As I said, I'm the most professional YouTuber out there, and completely on the ball when it comes to my side chat and everything. They have to. No, chat, you're fantastic. I really love that you're here. Hearing this really interesting discussions. Apparently, Beamsy says PTown is making up a person that never existed, as the stories here saying is a cross between Ignaz Semmelweis, the one who did the cleaning, and Robert Koch, the father of germ theory. So Beamsy's claiming that you have a person that isn't real.
I put the name in the chat. I was wrong. It's a Hungarian dude.
But I didn't want
to. Ignaz Philip Semmelweis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ignaz, because Beamsy's referenced him.
Semmelweis, yeah.
Hungarian physician, and he did that in New York, you said?
No, I was wrong.
Okay.
I don't know why I thought it was New York.
Yeah, and that was he was born in 1818, so that was certainly after the 1500s of when it was first sort of, described.
If you just If you have this Wikipedia page up, you just go to a second paragraph and it summarizes my point.
Yeah. He sort of suggested hand washing would be sort of advantageous kind of thing, and he was rejected. Which, I think that's wrong. I think that somebody with that idea, but I'm not seeing the ghosts thing.
I learned about it of all things in a logic textbook years ago. So I don't. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
He was surprisingly hard to Google.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean that's just sort of what Bamesy said. I'm not sure how how accurate it is.
It's funny. I remember.
I'm not reading that out,
name.
Bamesy, why do you gotta insult Pete? I'm not reading that out. No way.
What did Beamsy say? It's like he's gotten banned from the chat because I can't see him anymore.
No, maybe. Serve him right if he did. No, I love Beamsy. I do love you, mate. Just sometimes you say sometimes what you say. I tell you what.
Well, the whole chat's filled with his dirty jokes, but I think it was his geology rant that is missing here.
Yeah, and he is a geologist and very, very knowledgeable about geology. I mean, do talk to him if you can. But he is very knowledgeable on geology. I probably wouldn't sort of tell him he doesn't know what he's talking about where geology is concerned. What the hell, Beamsy?
I don't see where Beamsy's saying anything.
Oh, maybe you've got him blocked, or he's got you blocked, perhaps. That is a possibility, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing him.
New stuff? Yeah.
Oh, God, Beamsy. Come on, dude. I'm not reading that out either. Beamsy. It's always Beamsy. Yeah, no, he's mentioning some sexual stuff and just thanks Beamsy. I appreciate it, but not the time nor place. Wait till Amy's stream and then you can be as rambunctious over there as you please. No, that looks like it's it. I thought there was another one addressed to me, but I didn't. Power word. Okay, so Blaster Master says power word. Why hasn't prayer been demonstrated to work under strict laboratory conditions? Do you realize we have tested the viability of prayer on large scales and it has no effect on reality?
I would just restate the baby in bathwater comment I made earlier. You know, it's kind of to say that you can't demonstrate it under laboratory conditions or, this assertion and then say, therefore, it is impossible or, less than reliable in some cases is kind of a, false dichotomy.
Well, I guess the point is that why does it never work under laboratory conditions? Like, is God preventing it from working in a demonstrable way where we're sort of analyzing it for the effectiveness of prayer? Because there's been studies done, most notable has been the Templeton Foundation, I believe it is, and they found that it has no effect on anything really. In fact, it can be detrimental if the person knows they're being prayed for. So I guess it's in all of these large scale studies, why do we not see prayer actually have an effect? I guess is what he's saying.
I guess if you can post it in the side chat, the large scale study paper, I'll review it. And then in the actual audio that we listened to earlier, it was ironic because the pastor was talking about how healing miracles are not what God says. And if you expect healing miracles, you are putting God in a box. And so to expect God to perform under laboratory conditions is putting God in a box. And essentially, I wouldn't expect that to work. I don't know the mind of God. I don't know the will of God. But I do know that God says, when two or three are gathered in his name, and that is a requirement. So I would imagine a laboratory condition where two or three are gathered in his name could possibly produce a miraculous healing. But if that requirement isn't met, then I wouldn't expect any of that to occur.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just looking for it now. I've just found articles about it, on sort of science things.
Yeah, and
I haven't found the
just
actual.
as a reminder, you had talked about earlier about being aware of miracles happening in not the name of Jesus, and then you mentioned Islam after that. So I'm interested in that as well. If you have any peer-reviewed study, because I have actually looked for them and I have not been able to find any. So that would be really interesting for me to see.
Okay, there's the paper in the private chat, and I'll put it in the chat too. Okay. Yeah, so the Templeton Foundation is actually a theist organization. So this was done by a theist one. So it basically says that it had no effect on complication-free recovery from this thing, and certainty was associated with a higher incidence of complications. So it actually had a detrimental effect in some cases. But this is just one of many studies done on intercessory prayer, and it's very strange that these type of things only happen when it's not in a study. It's kind of one of those things that we would kind of expect, if it had an effect, to show up somewhere, and it hasn't. And you can sort of say, hey, well, it's only shown up in these very exclusive cases and hasn't yet. But it's one of the reasons why we sort of go, well, we can't take it as a correlation. And this is speaking to your correlation thing. We can't take it as a correlation because when we do the studies, it appears completely uncorrelated. Not even, not just that it's correlated and there's no causation, but in actual fact, completely uncorrelated at all. And these are the type of studies where if there was an effect, even a slight one, even a one that only happens in a very, very few amount of cases, we should see some effect in these large scale studies that we have, and we don't. And you could sort of, no, I get you. And you could say, hey, it only happens like on such a low basis that it hasn't made into the studies. And I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that could be the case. But, it's one of the things where we can't make the conclusion that prayer is causing these things. Sorry, Pal, but go ahead, mate.
No, I agree with you. I think that having a study that showed a direct correlation between prayer and recovery in these patients would be awesome. But I think even if there was a study that existed like that, I think the conclusion would still be more research is required. And I think it would still point to what effects does this prayer have on the autonomic nervous system. So I don't think at any point you would even prove causation, even with that.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there can be sort of stronger evidence that can be found. If it was that, 75% of people that had intercessory prayer actually, didn't heal miraculously, but had a better effect kind of thing, then that would be at least a correlation to say that prayer is doing something, but we don't have that. So it doesn't look like the prayer is doing anything, and these people seem to heal with the same probability as chance, where there have been sort of people that have healed. But if miraculous is just low chance, then I guess that's your definition of miraculous, and that counts as a miracle. It wouldn't count under my definition. It would have to be demonstrated to have a deity of some or supernatural something involved in somewhere.
So earlier we briefly talked about the NDE stuff and the child and the people who are brain dead. I never got
Yeah.
your reaction to that.
Oh, look, I mean, I flicked through the paper and it was sort of saying that near-death experiences, you don't necessarily have to be near death for them to occur. Sometimes it's just the person unconscious, that it's not technically near-death experiences.
Right, not all of them in the paper were, yeah.
Right. And the thing is that these people, they're not dead. It's near-death experience, right? So the brain hasn't 100% shut down. And they sort of go on to say, well, we don't know how they could have experienced this with the brain in the, way that it has. And I do note that this has no DOI, which means it's not actually peer-reviewed. Are you aware of that?
I just saw that it was on ncbi.gov.
Okay, well, I mean, it might be in a research journal. I'm not sure, because usually a digital object identifier is the thing that shows that something has actually been peer-reviewed, and I don't see one. But no, it is interesting, and I think that sort of, but it's kind of weird that a lot of them just said, bright colors or things like this. It's not necessarily that they had any kind of religious significance, that it's just they saw these things that they shouldn't be able to see, bright or vivid light kind of things. So I don't see why that points to supernatural when the brain is shutting down. But it hasn't shut down. You're not dead. It's near death. So the brain is in the process of shutting down, basically.
So if there was a paper that said the person was actually brain dead and had an NDE, would that qualify?
No, nobody's come back from complete brain death. Nobody. I'm really sorry, but nobody's brain has completely shut down with no oxygen going to the brain, and they've come back. That hasn't happened. That if they do come back, the brain will be shut down and they will be a vegetable. Complete brain death is not recoverable.
So is brain dead no oxygen, or is it no brain waves?
Well, it's no oxygen to the brain. The brain has died.
Okay. So if somebody comes back from that or has an NDE, then that would be, to you, impossible. Would it qualify as supernatural?
Well, I don't think it's impossible. I think that we would have to research it a lot more, because the thing is that without the brain actually being on, and you do notice this if you do take some kind of general anesthetic that shuts your brain down, that the temporal lobe stops working, so you do not register time. I don't know if you've ever been under a very strong general anesthetic, but basically it's click and you wake up and there is no sense of time from one to the other. So while the brain's shutting down, you could see all kinds of things, right? And then if the brain died and then woke up, you wouldn't have the sense of time between your brain shutting down completely and you waking up. It would be just that thing of the brain shutting down, then going to waking up. Do you understand? You can't measure time without the brain.
Yeah, I understand. And I think this is kind of a conversation about consciousness, right? You say...
kind of, yeah, I guess so.
You say in a strictly material sense, the brain dies, therefore, or if the brain is dead, there can be no conscious thought. And then I would say...
yeah, I would say that, yeah.
And I would say there is an intangible thing called consciousness.
Oh,
and
well,
I would say
that's an entirely other conversation. I would certainly get you to get evidence for that, but I don't think we can get into something that complicated right now, Power Word. I'm sorry, mate,
right.
but
all I was saying is it's the same. You're on one side of the coin I'm on the other. That's all.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up and sort of say, well, thank you so much for being with us. There's a ton to talk about. I might leave it a while. I don't like to have sort of people back to back to back. As much as I love having you on, don't get me wrong, I do love having you on. I do want to sort of interview lots of people and atheists and, other people with different views to sort of just spread it out a bit, but I would love to have you guys back on. That I really enjoyed the conversation. I really did. Even though we vehemently disagree on stuff, I do like talking to you, Power Word, and PTown's right. You're perfectly fine. Good to have a conversation with. Is there anything you want to say before we go? Anything, PTown, you want to say before we go?
No, just have a great night.
Yeah,
Appreciate
cheers, you too.
You having us on.
Morning or wherever you are now.
Or morning.
Yeah, it's 2 a.m. where I am, and I really appreciate you having us on, Mark. I really appreciate your demeanor. I think I said before when we were kind of backstage that there was like a different Mark that I saw debating Kent, but tonight I really appreciate you. Like you absolutely were respectful. And I think that's very important to having great communication and dialogue.
Oh, thank you so much, Power. And you're fantastic, mate. I was kind of worried because sometimes you do get people that, and I hope I didn't come off too critical saying don't preach, but it's just one of those things where that's not going to convince me, and I do apologize, but it just isn't, mate. I'm really sorry, but it just isn't.
Yeah.
So I would rather get to the epistemology rather than the theology. Which is great, but we got there, and even though I'm incredibly unprofessional and jumbled things up a bit, we got there, and I think it was a great conversation, and I want to thank chat for coming in and hanging in there. It was great, and I hope you have all a wonderful day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and thanks for joining us today.